This week at the movies, one of the most beloved children's books of all time is now one of the best films of 2009.
We've got the early review. Also coming up this week.
Thanks a lot for bringing me here to Problem Island.
From swingers to wedding crashers to relationship therapy. Well, that's life. Vince Vaughn in Couples Retreat.
It's not a ghost. What is it?
Is it the next Blair Witch Project? We'll review Paranormal Activity.
This is $1,000.
Yes, it is.
Plus, Chris Rock goes where no man has gone before with the documentary Good Hair.
I'm Max. I'm an explorer. I travel by sea. I used to travel by air.
Obviously, you have no home or family.
Well, I have one of those, but...
But you ate them all?
No. I have no plans to eat anybody.
I'm A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
And I'm Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune. Once in a decade, the right movie makers get a hold of a great children's book, and the results are as special as you hoped for. Here is an early review of Where the Wild Things Are. The 1963 Maurice Sendak classic has no moral of any kind beyond the cathartic value of a good rumpus, but Sendak had every sort of empathy for a preteen child's mood swings. In the film, written by director Spike Jonze and Dave Eggers, we spend a few beautifully judged scenes with Max and his family. After acting out violently against his single mother, Max runs away from home, gets on a boat, and sails away to an island populated by a brand new peer group.
This is our family. I hope you can see how excited they are to have a king. Sometimes they have an odd way of showing it. I mean, they act weird, you know, and can hurt other people's feelings.
That's James Gandolfini providing the voice of Carol, the wildest and neediest of the wild things. Decreed their king, Max organizes dirt fights and proves himself a wily adversary.
I have an idea. Come out!
No!
Why not?
Because you're going to hit us in the head with dirt.
Man, you really have us figured out.
A young actor named Max Records plays Max, and here he shares with Carol a scene worthy of The Little Prince.
Did you know the sun was gonna die?
What? That can't happen. I mean, you're the king. And look at me. I'm big. How could guys like us worry about a tiny little thing like the sun?
I was completely unprepared for the emotional texture of Where the Wild Things Are. It takes Sendak's classic in some fairly radical and melancholy directions, yet the results are beguiling. And the last scene with Max and his mother, played by Catherine Keener, is just, well, the film won't be for everyone, but to me, it's pure magic. See it. Tony, I love this film.
You said radical, and I think you put your finger really on something. This is one of the most unusual and audacious children's, big-budget children's movies ever made, and also one of the saddest. And I think that kids will be fine with it. Kids will understand the moods and the way that Max interacts with both the real world and the imaginary world. I think some parents might be a little frightened of it because it takes those emotions so seriously and goes so deep. But this is a wonderful movie.
Yeah, it's
this
remarkable.
Is a really amazing piece
If you laid this out on paper and you were told that, okay, this film begins with explanations about why Max's family life is difficult, why he's having trouble in the neighborhood with his friends and his peer group, whatever, it all sounds like the worst kind of Hollywood, conventional, okay, let's explain.
Give it a backstory.
Right, a broken home, all that. And it is unbelievable how beautifully this is handled. It's like a documentary,
And the realism, what's amazing too is that the realism that starts there in these very, very gentle, almost dialogue-free scenes where you get how Max feels about the bigger kids in the neighborhood, how he feels about his sister, how he feels about his mother's new boyfriend. That same realism carries over into the land of the wild things.
To the island,
so that these monsters who are made of costumes with CGI faces and voiced by these wonderful actors, they're just as real and as complicated as the real people.
Right, and I think there's a lot of really clever parallels set up without hitting you over the head, where you see how the friends that Max makes on the island really are kind of a mirror image of his issues back home. But this is one of those few movies, Tony, this year where I kind of held my breath scene to scene. I'm thinking, man, I think they're going to pull this off. He's going to pull this
beautiful.
off.
And he really does.
Oh.
And you need to see it. So next up is Good Hair, a new documentary featuring Chris Rock. It takes place in barbershops and beauty parlors, and it features a lot of women and a handful of men, some famous and almost all African American, talking about weaves, curls, wigs, and relaxers.
This is a weave. right now.
This is a weave. That's my edges and everything.
I have pieces that are
Kind of like, you know, like extensions.
right now. I have clips in my hair. I've attached 2 pieces here because I want a little more fullness.
You might think this topic would make for an esoteric, superficial, or narrow movie, but Good Hair, directed by Jeff Stilson, will make you think again. It's about race, sex, economics, globalization, almost too much for a single movie to take in. In addition, Good Hair features some Michael Moore-style theatrics, as when Rock, noting that most of the hair black Americans buy comes from East Asia and India, tries to peddle some black hair to Los Angeles businesses.
Would you like to buy some black hair? Yeah, we have. I have all sorts of black hair here. Some of this hair is from Cleveland and Cincinnati. This hair is from Detroit.
Well, you might want to take it back.
Chris Rock is engaging and lighthearted, but he's also a serious social critic as well as a comedian. I just wish this movie were a little more pointed and focused, didn't get quite so tangled up in its own enthusiasm. There's a lot of interesting stuff here, but I have to say, it's better if you rent it.
No, it's a better film than that, Tony. I think it's 2 films, right? And one of
them's not very good.
One of them's good enough. It's the documentary in Atlanta at the Bronner Brothers hair show that's you know, like enjoyable enough in its way, but everything else about this film, I was very surprised at how good an interviewer Rock is, for one thing, and really what he gets out of actresses like Nia Long, and also on his trip to India, which is not played for laughs, which is dead serious about, you know, where these weaves are coming from and the religious ceremony it's tied up with them. I mean, it really kind of does a very artful job about tying in kind of a global billion-dollar phenomenon that he has a kind of a question or two about.
Well, yeah, I just didn't need the stuff at the hair show. I didn't need to see people cutting hair underwater and doing all these kind of crazy stunts.
Well, you
what
don't,
I thought
you
was
don't need
fascinating,
anything done with your hair. You're fine.
Well, I like your weave, by the way.
Thank you.
But anyway, I mean, this movie just does take what seems like a kind of a superficial topic and really does go into it with great depth, talking about the relations between black men and black women, all the money that's spent,
and the
who
scene in the
controls the
barbershop.
business. The scenes in the barbershop are fantastic.
Terrific, yeah. And that's a scene, the barbershop scene, where he just goes in and starts talking to black men about this phenomenon of what the hair industry is doing to their culture. I don't know. It's a small point. It starts funny and it gets more and more serious.
But it's also not didactic. I mean, he's making some points about racism, about standards of beauty, about self-image, but he's not preaching it anymore.
No,
he's very good at doing that.
No, I say see it. I say see it. Coming up next, we stay up past our bedtimes to review the midnight cult movie phenomenon, Paranormal Activity.
Spooky. And later, we'll have a therapy session about Couples Retreat starring Vince Vaughn.
Welcome to Eden.
Last month, in a handful of cities, Paramount Pictures began presenting midnight screenings of a thriller with no stars, no special effects to speak of, and a location that sounded about as thrilling as a cheese sandwich. The inside of a suburban San Diego house. Scary, kids. A few weeks later, and now in wide release, we have the micro-budget phenomenon that is Paranormal Activity. Paramount isn't providing any clips from writer-director Oren Peli's film, only the trailer, which is heavy on the audience reaction shots.
High-def camera on. My girlfriend Katie, she thinks there's something in the house. I don't know.
You believe me, right?
Hearing a weird sound.
Something's here. I feel it breathing on me.
Katie Featherston and Micah Sloat play a young couple determined to capture on video some sort of evidence that Katie is being plagued by demons. Even after they start hearing weird thunks downstairs at 3 a.m., instead of calling in the experts, Micah goads the unseen presence into revealing itself. The movie, which was shot for $15,000, has a lot in common with that improbable decade-old blockbuster, The Blair Witch Project. But I found this one a lot more effective than the similarly low-budget Blair Witch. Just when Paranormal Activity needs to deliver a good jolt or two, you know what? It does. I say see it before the inevitable overhyping begins, along with the inevitable backlash. And does the backlash begin right here?
Let's get it started right now. The backlash starts here. You've
Why?
done the
Why?
hyping.
Why don't you like it?
Well, look, I went to see this movie at a midnight show, and I found that the most entertaining thing about it was the audience. And, you know, I was thinking about doing a rent-it vote on this, but that makes no sense at all, because this movie would just look terrible on your TV. I mean, it was shot in this consumer grade, you know, barely above the level of cell phone cameras camera video with really bad sound. Also, though, if you see it in theaters, you know, at a 4 p.m. show, or a few weeks from now when the theaters have emptied out and there's 15 other people sitting there texting while you're watching it, it's not going to have the same jolt. So to me, it's kind of like there's a lot of hype going in. Everyone who goes in at the midnight showings has sort of agreed amongst themselves that they're going to have a good time and have a good scare, but the movie really doesn't support it.
I think it's better than that, because I think, to me, it's very small. There's not much going on visually, really. Yes, it's a midnight movie phenomenon. I think it's better than Blair Witch, though, because I didn't get the nausea cam effect what I did with Blair Witch. And to me, Tony, it's like an antidote to all this torture stuff you get with the Hostel Saw franchise.
It's as if Pelly has just stripped down what is the bare minimum of a horror movie. What do you need? You need a closing door. Right. You need, you know, some footsteps. You need someone dropping something on the floor downstairs.
And you need a character dumb enough to be recording all of it, no matter what's going on.
And not leaving the house because some supposed ghost expert said, you have to stay here, they'll chase you, there's no reason to go anywhere.
But you got no satisfaction out of the ending?
What I would say about it is it's not bad within its own premise, but it's so stripped down that it doesn't give you enough of a story. It doesn't haunt you.
I agree with you on that point, but I think not all horror movies are even going for that larger dimension that would actually haunt your dreams. I think it's a pretty good 90 minutes.
Well, what I would say about it is, if you've already missed the, you know, the sort of the pre-hype midnight screening thing, you're just going to need to skip it. But later, we'll have some horror movies just out on DVD. And also, we're going to talk in depth about other midnight movies on our website. Go to atthemoviestv.com and click on Web Exclusives.
Coming up next, Dysfunction in Paradise. Vince Vaughn stars in Couples Retreat.
Now it's a party.
You've got your canoeing. They've got your jet skiing. It's got couple skill building and snorkeling.
Whoa, back up. What was that last thing?
Snorkeling?
No. Before snorkeling, after jet skiing, you said couple skill building. That sounds like therapy to me.
Oh,
see, that's
we don't believe in
be a
therapy.
problem.
No.
Hell to the no.
You know what they say, marriage is easy, comedy is hard. Actually, that's not what they say at all. But our next movie, Couples Retreat, about 4 couples on a tropical therapy getaway, demonstrates just how difficult it can be to wring laughs out of modern married life. This movie is half naughty, way too nice, and not nearly funny enough. There are a few amusing bits. The star is Vince Vaughn, after all, who is reliably amusing, doing his crybaby trapped in the body of a grizzly bear shtick. Here, he works out his post-traumatic stress after a brush with some sharks.
Technically, I was bit by a shark.
Dave, I mean, really, did they penetrate your skin? Do you really need that bandage?
Lucy, I don't know what to tell you, okay? You tell me if I need the bandage.
It looks like you scraped yourself on the ladder, maybe, on the way out.
I'm sorry?
Nothing wrong with the cast of this picture, although nobody does anything very new or interesting. Jason Bateman, Kristen Davis, Jon Favreau, Ken Jeong. A lot of potential, but the writers and director go for easy, done-to-death gags. Where would Hollywood comedies be these days without yoga?
So I will transfer you my energy. I will transfer my karma. Here is my karma on you.
Jason!
You have a great aura. Yes.
Jason!
Encouragement. Yes!
Couples Retreat is safe and timid and also a bit of a mess, with plot points that don't connect and a tone that swerves from tepid satire to just the kind of self-help cliches it's supposed to be making fun of. My advice to you is summed up in the movie's title. Couples Retreat. Everyone else, too. Skip it.
Skip it, I say, too, yes. Vince Vaughn is a real actor as well as a real movie star, Tony, and it's amazing to me what he can do to get an audience into something like 4 Christmases, which is one of the only comedies I like less than Couples Retreat.
I actually like it better, but that's another discussion.
Well, you know, that's your life. But no, I just find that Vaughn, because he co-wrote and produced this thing as well as acting it, I just think he's kind of lost sight about how to make a character for himself that isn't just some sort of smug, audience-pleasing
Well, he's just always the same guy doing the same thing. And the weird thing about this movie, over the summer when the trailers came out, there was a lot of stuff that implied a much kind of harder-edged, raunchier comedy. There's a whole thing with one couple in there who, you know, you see cheating on each other. And you don't see that in the movie. It's just later on at the very end there's some brief revelation that they've been cheating on each other. And it's just all of these things that don't make sense, that don't add up.
Tony, Vince Vaughn is in a position to demand better material for himself than this. I say skip it. The next Audrey Hepburn, the new Kate Winslet, British actress Carey Mulligan has drawn some pretty bold comparisons for her performance in the charming new coming-of-age story in Education. She plays Jenny, a bright suburban London teenager. The story is set in the early 1960s, and Jenny's parents are played by Alfred Molina and Kara Seymour. They represent post-war English life at its least glamorous.
I
thought we agreed that cello was my interest or hobby.
Well, it already is your interest or hobby. So when they ask you at the Oxford interview, what is your interest or hobby, you can say the cello and you won't be lying. You don't have to practice a hobby.
Can I stop going to the youth orchestra then?
Jenny's ready for more than what her immediate neighborhood and her peer group have to offer her. Along comes an older man named David, played by Peter Sarsgaard, with a maroon sports car at his fingertips and a twinkle in his eye.
You have no idea how boring everything was before I met you. Action is character, our English teacher says. I think it means that if we never did anything, we wouldn't be anybody. And I never did anything before I met you.
David's precise line of work is shifty, as Jenny discovers. The whole movie is a gently comic series of discoveries. Nick Hornby adapted the Lynn Barber memoir, and director Lona Scherfig's ensemble includes Rosamund Pike, Dominic Cooper, the great Emma Thompson, but Mulligan is simply extraordinary in this film, as deft a comedian as she is a dramatic actress. I say see it.
I certainly agree with you about Carey Mulligan. I think she's just wonderful. And this is a very complicated role because this girl has to start out in a way smarter than she ends up. You know, she starts out, she thinks she's got it all figured out, and she meets this guy who she thinks is this very cultured, sophisticated, you know, man of the world, and he turns out to be something else, and the performance has to track her changing perceptions of this man and her ambivalence about him and what she's actually learning. It's called an education, and she learned some pretty tough lessons. She also, clearly, this young woman, has learned how to act, and we can see in this scene where she goes toe-to-toe and face-to-face with Emma Thompson herself.
Because none of us would be here without a degree. You do realise that, don't you? And yes, of course, studying is hard and boring.
Boring?
I'm sorry?
Studying is hard and boring. Teaching is hard and boring. So what you're telling me is to be bored, and then bored, and finally bored again, but this time for the rest of my life.
It's a good scene. I think the writer, Nick Hornby, only wants to make audiences so uncomfortable with any moment in this woman's journey, and it's a little bit of a problem.
It's a little soft,
But I tell you, Mulligan reminds me of Wendy Hiller, and you know, the great English actress who was in I Know Where I'm Going, you know, Pygmalion, wonderful, and she's got that same kind of star quality.
She absolutely does, and for that reason, this is a definite see it. Coming up next, the movies that sent a chill down our spines and made us jump out of our seats in the DVD Out Now segment.
This is Ganesh.
Okay, now it's time for our DVD Out Now segment. With Halloween quickly approaching, we decided to focus on a spook or two. My pick this week is a little slice of heavenly hell. Director Sam Raimi took a break from his big-budget Spider-Man franchise to devote time to a smaller, personal picture, something that took him back to his filmmaking roots. Those roots, of course, are soaked in blood and the most despicable sorts of evil deadliness. The film was Drag Me to Hell, and my DVD pick didn't get the audience it deserved in the theaters.
Soon it will be you who comes begging to me.
The film's a zesty mixture of scares and laughs, and it comes with a timely cautionary moral. When in doubt, do not evict the old gypsy woman with the literally evil eye. That's what I say.
Good advice,
Yes.
but that's kid stuff compared to mine. To call my DVD pick a scary movie would be a criminal understatement. It's Takashi Miike's Audition, and I will tell you right now, this is not for the faint of heart. It would give Freddy Krueger nightmares. A widower wants to remarry, and he holds auditions to find an eligible woman. The perfect candidate is a young lady who lives all alone in an apartment, tastefully furnished with a telephone and a burlap sack. Do you really want to know what's in that bag? Are you sure? If so, there's a new collector's edition of this movie that will show you everything you need to know in exquisitely gory detail. It's a masterwork of Japanese horror, but please, brace yourself. Be forewarned. It will mess you up.
I'm a mess already. I can't even imagine watching it.
You were a mess to begin with, Michael.
So, Audition is available now, and Drag Me to Hell, my pick, will be available on Tuesday. Coming up next, want to know what you can't miss this weekend? Stay tuned for my 3 to see.
I'm gonna puke.
Closed captioning for At the Movies is sponsored by... Hotel provided by Park Hyatt Chicago, Chicago's award-winning hotel and luxury dining experience, located in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile on Water Tower Square.
Okay, my 3 to see spells trouble 3 different ways. It's on skates in number 3, Whip It, about a Texas teenager who forsakes the beauty pageant world for roller derby. Ellen Page leads a sharp ensemble in Drew Barrymore's directorial debut. Number 2, Zombieland, the undead extravaganza starring Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg. Mr. Scott over here didn't go for it, but Tony, I know your personal history is rife with zombie incidents, so that explains that. And number 1, A Serious Man. This is a pungent comic fable in which a physics professor in 1967 suburban Minneapolis is confronted with the new freedoms, along with the age-old question directed at whoever's running the show called life, why me? Why me?
Why not? That's it for now. Remember, we're always online. Just go to our website at themoviestv.com.
And we'll leave you with a recap of this week's show. Join us next week for reviews of New York, I Love You, starring Bradley Cooper, Natalie Portman, and Ethan Hawke. And until then, we'll be at the movies.
IHOP's gone NFL with an all-pro lineup featuring AFC and NFC stuffed French toast.
Millions of pet owners trust 1-800-PET-MEDS for fast service, free shipping, and big savings. Call now or order online from 1-800-PET-MEDS, America's largest pet pharmacy.
In my kitchen, I want only the best in taste. Eggland's Best.
I love Eggland's Best because of all the great nutrition. That's why they're the only eggs I give to my son, the chef.
Eggland's Best, the better egg.
From Jennifer, for a limited time only, an incredible 12-piece living room for $5.99. A sofa, chair, 3 tables, 2 lamps, and more. 12 pieces, $5.99 from Jennifer.